You might be forgiven for thinking that I absolutely hate every single thing to do with Dovetail games, and that I want to destroy their reputation or something. Provided, and this is most important, provided that your criticisms were grounded in facts, and are not just butthurt fanboys spitting the dummy again. In case it somehow wasn't already crystal clear, I do not dislike the DTG staff as people. The same goes for third-party developers like Rivet Games. Nor do I dislike the Train Sim World franchise as a whole. What I actually dislike are the practices of the developers, and this video is my attempt to explain why I still play the game despite my often harsh, but not baseless, reviews on several add-ons. And I do not take kindly to people dismissing what I say in my reviews and calling me a Dovetail hater instead. Do you people even watch the damn videos before commenting? To start off with, and in my opinion, the graphics are a noticeable improvement on what you get in the older TS Classic, although the lighting on certain routes and weather conditions leaves a lot to be desired, especially on the Long Island Railroad, more specifically at Atlantic Terminal Station. Another thing I like, for the most part, is the physics. On most locomotives and units, it actually feels like the vehicles have some proper weight to them. But then you come across things with dodgy physics, like the Ratishabahn GE 4/4 Mark II, and wonder just how much, or rather, how little time the devs spent working on this DLC. The modelling of the locomotives, multiple units, and rolling stock is often excellent, and consequently spoiled by underwhelming sounds of physics. Oftentimes you'll get accurate differences between different variants of a certain family or class, as I've noticed on the Class 375/9, 377/4, and 387/2 Electrostars. Now if only we could get more Electrostar variants in the game, especially the 375/3, 375/8, 377/1, 377/3, 377/7, and 387/1. In stark contrast to the multiple accurate Electrostar variants, we still haven't got the alternative variant of the Deutsche Bahn BR143 electric locomotive, complete with a slightly streamlined cab and numbers past 143302-8. This means that the S-Bahn Dresden services don't look fully authentic in-game. I appreciate the efforts of those who make mods for TSW, because they significantly improve certain aspects of the game, especially where the sounds on the ScotRail Class 385 are concerned, although TSW4 apparently doesn't have proper mod support yet. In my case, I just prefer to play the game rather than try to get my head around the practice of making additional content. I find that lot to be quite overwhelming due to my limited knowledge of TSW's technical side. Something else that I like about TSW is being able to get up out of the driver's seat and walk around the trains and stations. As well as being a yobbo and walking in the rail corridor, something that you should never do in real life. Underline never. If you're not in the mood for driving a locomotive or multiple units, it's nice to just be able to ride as a passenger or stand trackside and watch the trains go by. Unfortunately, you can't play as a signalman or guard. The latter is only available in one tiny scenario on the Glossop line, and nowhere else in the whole game. Actually, come to think of it, why the hell did they not bother implementing guard mode in TSW4? At least then, Dovetail's decision to make an entirely new iteration of the game would have made a tiny bit of sense. Timetable mode is the single best feature of TSW, in my opinion. With this, you're able to choose any service to drive out of a debatably realistic 24-hour timetable, and all the other services you could otherwise choose from are also present in-game, providing a semi-realistic rail scene without the unreasonable hassle of trying to find other scenarios in TS Classic, or make one yourself, not to mention sorting out the often high number of required add-ons. Services can vary wildly in length from route to route, averaging anywhere from 25 to 95 minutes, sometimes even shorter or longer. Some of my favourite routes in this game are Island Line 2022, Cathcart Circle, Boston Sprinter, Nachverkehr Dresden, and the Niedertalbahn. One of my favourite services to operate is the round trip from Ryde Pierhead to Shanklin in the Class 484. It is so short that it can be completed in less than 60 minutes. Despite my favourite TSW route being the modernised Island Line, I still like the non-linear routes with a good amount of service variation, like the aforementioned Nachverkehr Dresden. Routes with less frequent services and service variation, such as the Clinchfield Railroad, have never really been my cup of tea. Although I rarely use the livery designer myself, due to its very finicky nature and my preference for default liveries, it's still a welcome addition and allows people to be a bit more creative if they don't want to be stuck with the default liveries. And although I don't plan to use the PC editor with TSW4, I'm interested to see what other people can create using that software. Hopefully we'll finally get some more interesting routes that Dovetail seems to show no interest in making themselves. Examples include literally any line in Wales, Australia, or New Zealand, as well as lines A and C of the Lyon Metro, London Fenchurch Street to Shoebury Ness via Purfleet, plus the alternative routes via Upminster, Basildon, or Ockenden, and Portadown to Londonderry in Northern Ireland. Let's not forget the Ski Tube Rack Railway in Australia either. As someone who has been playing Train Simulator Classic for the better part of 10 years, and properly playing TSW since 2019, I am very disappointed to see the way Dovetail treats their own customers and game, especially when it still has so much potential, even 6 years after the original Sandpatch Grade route was released. There are still a lot of things that let the game down phenomenally, these being Dovetail's empty promises, leaning more towards easily excited kids and fanboys instead of respecting the dedicated rail fans, unreasonably high DLC prices, poor route choices, limited amounts of included rolling stock, subpar sounds, weak scenery details, missing overhead wires on too many routes to recall off the top of my head, overly frequent DLC releases, and a persistent hesitance to fix the bugs with existing DLC while just releasing more new content instead and leaving the previous stuff to rot. Don't even get me started on the locomotives and rolling stock that get recycled and included with several routes, such as the overused Deutsche Bahn BR185/2 electric locomotive, BR363 diesel locomotive, Doppelstockwagen coaches, and EWS Class 66 diesel locomotive. There's also those ridiculous loco add-on bundles that Dovetail made in the TSW3 era, which are essentially just payware reskins that have a harder time justifying why they're even payware in the first place, and thus leading me to question why it's too much to ask to just get these reskins as free updates. After the amount of outrage and frustration from people struggling to deal with this game, not to mention all the money people have spent, we deserve at least one free locomotive or livery every now and then, effectively as a form of compensation for the people who are still playing the ruddy game. Dovetail seem to have this rather arrogant attitude where they think they can keep sticking up their middle finger at us and continue their existing practices until the cows come home, in spite of all the people who constructively criticise this stuff. It's almost as if they're actively showing contempt for their loyal customers, as opposed to their Outlook for Thursday customers. I don't go to the ambassador channels here on YouTube, of which I am always skeptical, for balanced reviews of TSW content. From what I've seen, most of them, not saying they're all like this mind, usually only talk about the good stuff, and that doesn't help the situation when it comes to new or veteran players trying to learn about whether or not a route is good. But to be clear, that's not me trying to boost my own ego or anything. I am aware of my own faults. And one more thing about the fanboys. I'll wager that, although these people probably think they're earning brownie points from Dovetail, the devs may not even give a toss about the people defending them as if they were a town about to be overrun by enemy soldiers. Outside of them pissing away all their money on this quarter-baked tat, of course. To anyone who tries to beat the dead horses that are the overused, "It's just a game, stop complaining," or "If you don't like it, don't buy it" arguments, I refer you to this quote from Maverick Hunter Daniel. "Ah yes, Train Simulator is just a video game, and a £5 note will be hand-delivered to your address if you can prove to me how that fact alone makes this game immune to criticism." There are still a few add-ons that I refuse to buy due to their bad execution or outright stupid concepts. Exhibit A, West Somerset Railway, solely due to the fact that Dovetail made a heritage railway that's better known for using steam locomotives, without including any steam locomotives, and just having diesels running the show instead. Something tells me that this add-on was a few years too early. Exhibit B, S-Bahn Central Schweiz. This is a recurring punching bag in my reviews, because I am still in shock that Rivet only made this route 16 miles long. I don't care what their reasoning was for making the route that short. You cannot be that fucking pathetic on something as significant as the first standard gauge Swiss route in TSW. The devs need to do better in future if they have any hope in hell of retaining me as a customer. Exhibit C, that stupid Norfolk Southern Heritage Unit pack, the last add-on released in the TSW3 era, which is just a set of payware and overpriced reskins for the General Electric ES44AC that have no business being payware in the first place. Especially when they can easily be made by players and uploaded free of charge on the Creators Club. As if that wasn't bad enough, Skyhook didn't include locomotive number 8098, the Conrail Heritage Unit. Although that was down to licensing issues, it still makes the pack look embarrassing and pathetic when you only get 9 of Norfolk Southern's ES44AC heritage locomotives. Exhibit D. Hell, even the Marseille to Avignon route. This route is so bad that I never wanted to pay for it. Instead, I only picked it up when Dovetail had a free offer on this route following their acquisition by Focus Entertainment. This route is an absolute joke for something as significant as the first, and so far only, French route in TSW. While the route is decently long, at 58 miles, it is spoiled by its incredibly restrictive and linear nature, not to mention the awful scenery details, especially on the high-speed line north of Aix-en-Provence. All you can do on this route are high-speed passenger runs in the TGV duplex, and it only takes half an hour to complete the run from Marseille to Avignon. Who in their right mind thought a route this bland and limited was a good idea? Just referring back to my preferred route types for a moment. What do long routes like Peterborough to Doncaster, Barstow to San Bernardino, Cassel to Würzburg, and especially Los Angeles to Lancaster really matter when there is barely anything interesting that you can do on those routes? Cathcart Circle and Boston Sprinter may be tiny by comparison, but at least you have multiple different services to operate on those routes. Crazy long routes spoiled by limited service variation are simply not as good as shorter routes with good service variation, even if those routes are linear. I dare say that, as time goes on, I'll still enjoy just loading up a route and going for a jolly jaunt in a random train or locomotive, such as the Class 484 on the modernised Island Line, the BR628-2 on the Niedertalbahn, or an MPI F40PH-3C on the Boston South to Stoughton service. But I don't want Train Sim World to die, and I reckon that if it ever happens, it'll be entirely down to Dovetail's appalling incompetence, laziness and greed pushing more and more people away.